Welcome to The Pestle, reviewing and breaking down movies to look for insights into the movie-making process. Hosted by The Dollar Menu. Nothing says bargain like chemicals pretending to be food. Now let's dim the lights and start the show.
It's like they ran an update and it completely wrecked.
Oh, yeah.
Check. You hear me still?
Yeah.
Cool. Testing audio?
Yep.
Cool. We're rolling. Welcome everybody to The Pestle. Today's show is brought to you by Cookieville Minimum Security Orphanarium. Pick out your favorite subsidy at Cookieville. Welcome everybody to The Pestle. I am Wes.
And I am Todd.
And this is a film podcast where we do analysis from the perspective of filmmakers, actors, dancers. We have our own dance crew. No, we do not. That would be the worst dance crew in America.
Oh God, please no.
Yeah. And so, yeah, we do a lot of analysis, and I don't know. We're usually on the hunt for something that, speaks to us on an emotional level or from a cinematic level, just to get better at this process. And more than anything, I think, spread the joy and love of our passion of movies. This is our 143rd episode, which is freaking insane. Like,
that's crazy.
In a couple months, it'll be our 4th year doing this, which is even crazier to say out loud.
Oh my gosh. How does that happen?
I don't know.
I guess one day at a time, right?
A day at a time. I talk to people, and I feel like I'm generally a fairly lackadaisical person, which is a polite way of saying I feel lazy all the time. But we've done 143 episodes, and I think it's just a matter of you build up a tolerance of doing a thing, you create a habit, and then you find, that becomes normal, ritualized. Like doing this show is a ritualized thing. The first month we did it, it caused, lots of anxiety in me, and like, how do I prepare? I over prepare. And then, it probably still took another 2 years after that before I settled down a little on the microphone. And after that, after you build this new thing, whether it's a new diet or whatever, exercise, then you can build new habits, and so I think for me, I get so used to building these new habits that I forget that I have them and start to feel lazy all over again. Like, I don't do anything. And then you start a new habit and like, I've written, 10 pages today on a thing I'm working on. And so I don't know, you never seem lazy. I don't know if you ever actually feel lazy, because I feel like you're a busy person. Like you always have something that you're doing.
Yeah, I definitely get lazy. Absolutely. But I think more than laziness, I get focus fatigue, right? If you want to call it that, where I'm working on something and then I'm exhausted with it and I need to move on to something else. But I feel like I'm always doing something, usually, even if that something is just watching a lot of movies. It's, I justify it by doing this podcast, right? Like, it's research. But I just love watching movies. I guess I don't need justification for it, but, overall, I like to stay busy for sure, but there are definitely times. I mean, this room is a good example. I built it, and then for maybe 2 months, maybe even longer, I can't remember when I finished it, 2 months ago, I didn't paint it. I built it and I was toast. I just could not get up the gumption to paint the thing. And then finally yesterday, I painted it. My wife and I did it together.
Ooh.
And it's done. With the exception of the door. The door looks like crap, and I got to do something about that. But everything else looks really, really good. But yeah, that's a good example of like, I guess you could call that laziness, but it was just, man, I was so spent from building the whole thing in general.
Built a building.
Yeah, I built a building, and I didn't know how when I started. So it was, yeah. Anyway, but it's, yeah. So I think everybody has that. I definitely have it, man. I do. Yeah. In some ways even worse, I think, because I like throw myself into something, and then I at some point I can just say done and walk away, like totally fine. As long as I have something else to walk away to, you know?
Yeah, I struggle with that because I'll be really excited about a project, write it, prep it, scout the location, put together a shot list, go shoot it. Shoot day is always really fun whenever you're well prepared. And then I get in post, start to get a little taxed, talk myself into, I have a process that I walk myself through in order to get through post. I'll organize footage and talk myself into doing one more step, just comb through the footage now, make your pulls and etc. And that eventually culminates in an actual edit. But when I start getting close to it being done, I'm like, man, I'm so over this. I'm just ready to be done. And I think I'm always looking forward to not having anything to do. And then whenever that moment comes, that's dread like I've never experienced. Like having nothing to do is existential dread.
Yeah. I get it.
And so, yeah, that's when you start cooking up new things. Like, okay, all right, I need a new project.
Isn't it weird? Because it's like, it's the process is, that's the gold, right? The process.
Yeah.
But it can also be taxing, And so, where you're in the process and you're thinking, I can't wait for this to be done. I can't wait for this to be done. When it's done, it's done, We've talked about this before. It's those monks in Tibet who make those those sand sculptures, right? And it takes them years to do it, and then they just destroy the whole thing the moment they're done because it's about the process. But I guess you got to love sand. You know what I mean?
Or the meditative process of actually putting it all together.
Right. Yeah. So that's interesting. So is it hard for you to edit? Not hard to do it, but like, when you have like 2 hours of footage and you got to make, into 20 minutes, is that difficult?
It depends on a couple of things. One, is it scripted or is it documentary style? Documentary style is really exhausting. Because you got to be super in tune with everything that's happening every moment. And so I'm scrubbing through. When I shoot documentary style, I spend heavy amounts of time combing through footage and trying to build a mental checklist of what a story is going to look like. Here's how I begin this section, and here's the story I tell through this section. And so that becomes exhaustive. Whereas with narrative stuff, I've already shot listed every scene, and now it's just a matter of, did I have any circle takes, which it doesn't matter to me. I know what my other producer, Ricky, loves circle takes. I don't.
What is that?
So whenever you have a scene, let's say, scene 2 and you shoot 10 takes, right? You're shooting someone's monologue and, you get through the 6th take and you're like, oh, that was really good. Hey, circle that one. And that way, whenever you get into post, it's a note for your editor to say, oh, he really likes take 6 and 8. And those are the really usable takes that, he enjoyed. And so I need to focus on those heavily to see what's usable out of those. And it's a good starting point to just kind of build your scaffolding of your edit. I don't really pay attention to those because I am both the writer, director, and usually the editor of my work. And so I already have in my head what I want, and it doesn't matter because on set, you're experiencing one thing, but you're experiencing it a whole new way through the edit, through the camera. Because I try not to stay married to my monitor too much. I try to watch the performance, depending on the project. If it's 360, I have to watch the monitor. There's no other way, or else I'm in the shot. That's the nature of 360. But 2D, I want to watch the emotions and see how it's hitting me, almost like a play. And then, but you get in the post, and now you got to experience it through the camera. Like, is the camera feeling the same thing that I was feeling? So it almost doesn't matter what felt good on set. Now the only real question is what feels good in the edit. And for that, I just don't really find notes useful unless it's for a client. And then the client might have objections to specific takes, and those are good for the notes to say, oh, we really can't use this because they use this word and that's a no word. This is the phrase that they want. Like I did a thing on mental health care, and so terminology was very touchy, like you would expect it to be over, a highly sensitive topic like that. And so, yeah, but even within that, like, because it's a narrative, I can just focus on, oh, that take doesn't work, you're out. That take doesn't work, you're out. And then I just kind of watch the footage, once or twice. First time, everything. Second time, my favorites. And then from there, it's just, sketching out the edits and, oh, this take works a little bit better because of the reaction shot works and clicks better and blah, blah, blah. And so, it really does depend. But I have an easier time depending on if I'm in the footage or not. And how, passionate I am about the project. The more passionate, the more painful it is to edit. That's just asking for trouble. And now I have to come to grips with myself as a writer and director, as opposed to like, oh, this is just a talking head video about a cup, it's like, that's fine. Here's my best take. They didn't float any words. They looked good. The product looked good. We're done. And then color it and make it pop.
Do you ever look forward to the day where you don't edit, where you direct and you shoot and you throw it to an editor and then you come in post a skeleton edit, I guess?
Part of me does.
Is that something that you would ever do?
Part of me really looks forward to that. I think I got to get to a much bigger level, like where I have, 7-figure, 6-7-figure budgets. Which one's 6? That's 100,000. No, yeah.
100,000.
Yeah, so I need 7-figure budgets before I get into that phase, just because I don't trust anybody to edit my footage and feel what I feel. I think I'm a highly sensitive person, and so I try to be very in tune with the emotions of whatever's happening on camera and whatever a shot may represent to me, even if it's, a shot without a person in it. Like there's still something emotionally that's being communicated that I try to be highly in tune with that will speak to whatever the film is. I've seen people edit my footage before and I'm like, that's not what that shot was for. That's not why I grabbed it. And so I have a hard time buying into the effort and the sensitivity of editors that are on my similar level, that, even if they're more technically proficient, which shouldn't be very hard. Like I'm pretty technically proficient, but there's still a lot of stuff I don't know. Like I don't use, Avid, and I don't know some of these frame blending things that people like to do. There's some morphing that you can do in Premiere, which I've only used a couple times. It usually has a tail in there, so it has to be very specific shots in a very specific circumstance before the morph cut really works in Premiere. Whereas in Avid, these big guys, these heavy hitters, they will splice takes without ever taking a cut away. Like I'm going to splice 2 separate takes and to merge the perfect performance without ever cutting away. Like there's some really highly technical capabilities out there, and I'm not on that level. But even if someone on my similar pay scale is on that level, I don't trust them to to see it the way I'm going to see it. And so I look forward to that day, but I have a suspicion that I just don't have enough trust in humanity for that.
Well, okay. What if you did your edit? You got it to a place where you were happy, right? Like maybe it wasn't as tight as you wanted, right?
Yeah.
But you have all the beats in there, all the emotional moments in there. And you had the money to give it to a heavy hitter who could then,
polish,
do their magic, tighten it up, polish it and stuff like that. Is that ideal? Would that be
that
something?
would be very ideal. Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
I think you're right.
Okay. And I guess this conversation kind of, pardon the pun, morphed into the question of relinquishing, not power, but relinquishing responsibility, I guess, a little bit. And at what level, because everybody has their different levels, right? Like mine is much lower than yours. I think mine is is like I pretty much know that everybody knows more than me, so I have no problem giving my stuff to anybody else. Like, what do you think? You know, but yeah, that's interesting. That seems like to me a pretty healthy marriage of you know, you wrote it, you shot it, you got your beats in there, you got your emotional aspects in there, and you can even circle moments like, this is important, don't touch this, or whatever, or, you know, don't lose this shot, don't lose that shot, kind of thing.
And for me, I think it would give me a lot of peace just knowing that I know what the footage is. I know the best that I can get out of this footage. And now I get a fresh set of eyes who are a pro's pro, and they can come in and say, oh, you're rushing this moment. Like, if you give this moment a little bit more space, you'll get a lot more out of that emotional impact that you're wanting. And they'll see what I'm trying to do, and just like you said, they'll add. It'll only get better.
Yeah.
And that would be really, really cool. Yeah. And give me some level of like.
And that's something that can happen relatively soon.
Yeah.
Like you could do that with, you know, one of the projects you're working on now.
Yeah, that's true.
Eventually.
Oof. I mean, need budget, but yeah.
Yeah. You'll get it.
Okay. Whoa, what are we doing today, man?
Oh, yeah. So today we're covering Hunt for the Wilderpeople, which was a reco. So if you haven't watched it, pause this episode and go watch it. It is streaming. Where was it streaming again? Is it Netflix? Netflix. Yeah. On Netflix. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll talk about a few things. We'll touch on some of the deadpan humor. We'll also take a dive into perspective and using perspective to tell a story and other such stuff and things and stuff.
And a quick synopsis of the film. A national manhunt is ordered for a rebellious kid and his foster uncle who go missing in the wild New Zealand bush. Written and directed by Taika Waititi, based on the book by Barry Crump, starring Julian Dennison as Ricky Baker, Sam Neill as Heck, Rima de Wiata as Bella, and Rachel House as Paula.
You know, sometimes in life, it seems like there's no way out. Like a sheep trapped in a maze designed by wolves. And you know that if you're ever in that situation, there are always two doors to choose from. And through the first door, it's easy to get through that door, and on the other side, waiting for you, are all the nummiest treats you can imagine. Fanta, Doritos, LMP, burger rings, Coke Zero. But you know what? There's also another door. Not the burger ring door, not the Fanta door. Another door that's harder to get through. Guess what's on the other side? Anyone want to take a guess?
Vegetables?
No, not vegetable. No.
Jesus?
You would think Jesus. I thought Jesus the first time I come across that door. It's not Jesus. It's another door. And guess what's on the other side of that door?
Jesus.
Jesus, yeah, Jesus. It's tricky like that, Jesus. So let us pray to Jesus, please, to make it a bit easier to get through those doors and to find you and your bounty of delicious confectionery.
He's
Brilliant.
tricky like that, Jesus.
He's tricky like that Jesus.
Oh my God. What? Did you even know about this movie?
No, I'd never heard of it.
Did it hit?
Yeah, you know, it was really good. I think kind of a small thing that ruined it for me is that Julian Dennison was also in this, I forget what it's called, but this Christmas movie, Santa Claus Christmas movie this past year. And it's just terrible. It's really, really bad. And he's bad in it. And like everything about it is bad. And I say it's bad because it's the second one. Oof. The first one was really, really good. And it's got, what's his name? I always forget the name. We talked about it. Kurt Russell. Thank you. It's got Kurt Russell in it. And so it's really, really, the first one's really good. And this other one is just not very good. And he's in it and he's not good in it. So it kind of ruined for
so
me.
you were a victim of a bad holiday movie.
I was a victim of a bad holiday movie. Yes, because his performance is really good.
Yeah.
I liked it. I liked his performance a lot. Sam Neill, I kept seeing his face and I was thinking, I know that guy. Is that the Jurassic Park guy? It's gotta be. I kept looking at him thinking, that's definitely him. Wait, maybe it's not him. No, it's definitely him. And then I looked it up and it was Sam Neill. And instantly I loved it, right? I was like, yes, Sam Neill's, that's great. I mean, I wouldn't watch it again, but I loved the performances. I thought moments of it were hilarious. I thought that their disregard for the passage of time was very interesting and fun. You know, when he breaks his foot, they stayed in that same place for 6 weeks while his foot healed. Like, wow, okay. But it passes like that, you know, and they don't make any other reference unless you're paying attention. You don't even notice, right? Which I thought was really interesting. You know, I like the way that the ant dies. They kill off the ant was really smart. You know, it's not like this dramatic thing. It's just she's already gone, and Heck is crying over her, and yeah, it says a lot. I kind of saw it coming, but that's fine. I didn't see. I guess I assumed maybe she would die, but I didn't really know what would happen. I just thought something bad is going to happen because they were, Ricky and her were starting to get along. He really liked her. You know, she would kiss him goodnight. He would say thank you. Like they started to be nice to each other. So that can never end well when you have a foster child in the house that is, you know, doesn't like you at first. And then, yeah, something bad's got to happen. And she was wonderful in it. I thought all the acting was really great. I thought the deadpan humor was fantastic. Yeah, it was a lot of fun watching it once through. I don't think I would watch it again necessarily, but I wouldn't deter someone from watching it either. You know, if someone asked, hey, what do you think of this movie? I'd say, oh, it's good. Yeah, definitely watch it for sure. It just wasn't something that I could go back to.
Yeah, it's funny because you saw it coming a mile away that Bella, the auntie, was going to die. You're like, oh, this. I was completely caught off guard. I was just thinking like, oh, where are we going from here? He got, I mean, I had the same thoughts like, oh, he's like part of a family now. So now I guess he just needs to get closer with Heck. And I'm curious, like, where is this going? No, I'll kill Bella.
Yeah.
I felt like I was in an episode of like South Park where you just, the record skips. You're like, you killed him. And so, yeah, but I mean, I loved it. I loved even just that brief moment of getting to know her and seeing him kind of being redeemed or at least seen. I think that was his big problems. He really wasn't seen. There was these things that were kind of assumed about him by Paula, the welfare worker. And instead we see him through her eyes. And it was nice. Like, okay, we're building towards something, then you rip that away and now we have to start from scratch again. And there's this interesting little thing that happens where Heck has to make a decision, right? Of, am I letting him go? Yeah, I don't really care that much, or at least I'm not going to let on that I do. Heck kind of lives in this world of self-rejection and self-exile, like a self-imposed exile, where he just refuses to let anybody, like, and Bella was his one person. And so, yeah, I think I got through a little bit. It was, I think the first moment that really hit me was the humor, the deadpan humor, because at first we're crossing over the New Zealand paradise. Like, if you've never been to New Zealand, or if you've only seen it through Lord of the Rings, you might think that's not really New Zealand. That's really New Zealand. Like, it's so beautiful. And it has a, beautiful bush, if that's what, they call it. Sorry, I didn't know. Like, it's not an outback.
You went there, not me.
Forest. And so you don't really understand like how absolutely breathtaking this land is. And it feels kind of dramatic as you're building up. This car is coming in, And then we get to Paula kind of giving the backdrop of Ricky. She's like, you don't understand what this kid's all about. He's a real bad egg, this Ricky. We're talking disobedience, stealing, spitting, running away, throwing rocks, kicking stuff, defacing stuff, burning stuff, and loitering and graffiti. And the way that I love that it's this
full list.
It's so good because it's a setup for the tone of the film. And the way it's building up, you're expecting something really bad, like this kid's got a rap sheet. But it's really just normal kid behavior. And the fact that she has to throw in some of these things, disobedience and spitting and and running away, like those are that's her definition of bad. So it's great because it also like it's communicating, I think, the stakes of the film, like the really low stakes. And so no one's really that bad in New Zealand. This is a pretty undeadly place. It's pretty safe, comparatively speaking. So I think it was at that moment whenever I got a hint of the humor that we're going to be dealing with that I was like, okay, I can find the deadpan humor like endearing and silly, and the funeral, that we played at a few minutes ago, where he's just given this terrible like pastoral sermon. He says it's another door. What do you think's on the other side of that door? Yeah, it's Jesus. It's a tricky one, that Jesus. And so it won me over. I think I also liked, this is a new perspective, or at least more fresh one. Normal Hollywood films don't really let you hang out in the wilderness in this way, in the forest, and people are living off the land and they're hunting and, they're eating their food. And you don't really get a lot of that in the wood. It's usually much more, trying to cast a message about, I don't know, whether it's hunting or, a different view of guns. And I appreciate that even at the end when Ricky, carelessly fires his gun, Heck is like, hey, what did I tell you about proper gun responsibility? It's like there's a whole fleet of cops on the other side waiting to kill him, and he's still trying to teach his kid about good gun etiquette. Like I love that. So it's really refreshing. Just even if you disagree with their lifestyle and some of their views, to at least experience a good-hearted and good-natured perspective of that side of life, that walk of life. We could use more perspective of all walks of life, and this felt very even-handed, because even within that story, if you want to take it there, and they don't really enforce that's not like heavily, that's very secondary, tertiary level of the story elements. But even within that, like you still get a fun, even-handed view of going too far, right? You have what is it, Psycho Sam in the woods?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So
he's
good.
like, do you think this guy's crazy? He's like, put on these helmets. It'll keep the government from hearing your thoughts. It's like, never mind. And it's like, okay, we can have fun both ways. Like, it doesn't have to be this perfect echelon of, whatever, conservative views or whatever. Like, we're going to have fun. We're going to be interested in both sides and exploring all the avenues. And we're going to do it in a pretty safe space. Like, we're in New Zealand. And in New Zealand, the idea, I'm sure this is hysterical, the idea that they broke out like whatever machine guns and tanks like to chase down a kid who just needs to go back. Like they ramp it up to a level 10, which I think is hilarious. They got helicopters and like raids. Like it's SWAT teams. It's absolutely absurd, and I think plays into the over the top deadpan humor of it, because they know this is silly, and at the same time they're going to play it to the bone. I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. I think I agree with you. It's probably not something that I'll rewatch a bunch. It felt like it stretched a little thin. Some of the story felt stretched a little thin. Like, we probably could have dialed this back a hair. Not that I would, at the same time, I don't know that there was anything that was wasted per se. I can't look at this and say, I would want to edit out them going for help to save the the guy they found, poisoned in his shack or whatever, or that was having, I think, kidney, failure or something.
Dialysis or something?
Something like that.
Something like that.
And there's, I don't think there's anything I would want to cut necessarily. I might speed things up a little and try to move a little bit faster, but it's all, I feel like every moment is still kind of earned, and you're appreciating like Ricky coming along and growing as a person. And at first he couldn't survive on his own, really. He was doing his best, but like he ate through all his rations really quick. And he's looking at this guy who caught an eel, and he's like, I don't eat slugs. And at the end of that, he's like, yeah, you know what? Slugs aren't so bad. And you get the sense of growth that he's appreciating the knack or the neck. As the first time watching it, I was like, the neck? What is that? Okay, it's just the neck. And I think it's their pronunciation. I think they're saying the knack, but because they're Kiwis, Sam Elliott, or not Sam Elliott, geez, Sam Neill, his accent I thought was fantastic from an American hearing it, and like I was really impressed.
Very. I mean, he never comes out of it. I mean, I was so impressed. That's one of the reasons why I didn't know it was him. And we don't talk about how good accents are on here. You know, like maybe one other time in 140 some odd episodes, but it was just incredible. So well, like I said, that I didn't know it was him. One thing that I think I just need to kind of maybe get over a little bit is that they dipped their toe in kind of like this Wes Anderson feel, but didn't go far enough with it. I think that's where I'm hung up a little bit, is like, okay, you've given me a taste of this kind of, locked off, symmetrical kind of like feel every now and then, but then the
crash zooms where we crash zoom into someone's face.
Like when he pops up or something in the woods and he's looking around and then he runs off. Like those kinds of things. Very Wes Anderson. Like you cannot do that without someone saying, oh, that's Wes Anderson. And yet they didn't go far enough down that rabbit hole. It's like, if we're going to do that, then that's a style. And I want to see more of that, because it's very specific. It's a very specific thing that like we're now looking for, right? We're looking for those kinds of things. And so to deviate from that with like, these dolly moves and, wide angle shots that are not symmetrical and, handheld shots even sometimes, like it just was, I didn't know what to think of it because of that, right? It was like, okay, if you went further down, even you don't have to go you don't have to go full Wes Anderson, but just stay in that kind of vibe a little bit more, and I would have liked it a whole lot better, I think.
Yeah, it's funny. I guess that never occurred to me, and I see exactly what you mean. But I think for me, it never wrecked me because of the location and the subject matter. It felt kind of unique enough. If I really stop and think about it, I can see a little overlap with like Moonrise Kingdom. I don't know which necessarily came out first. I want to say this came out first, but the idea, like there's other films. There's a film called Submarine that, because of its subject matter and the character, like I immediately was like, oh, you're going Wes Anderson. And I had that same exact reaction, and it kind of took away from the experience a little bit. But here, it never occurred to me. I was there the whole time. I think going in, for me, knowing that it was Taika Waititi, and I've already seen some of his other films, I was just expecting some of his dry and wry sense of humor that he brings to his other projects. Like, this is what Thor Ragnarok wished it could be, and was never going to be. And so, I was able to shrug that off, or at least be immune to it to some degree.
Yeah. All right. Fair enough.
I'll just run down perspective. I don't really have much. I've already went through half my notes, actually. The perspective helps us see the world through a character's eyes and like emotionally identify with them and their world. And there's a lot of ways that you can build perspective. And one obvious way is through cinematography, whether that's through like a reaction shot. You see how a character, in this case, we can frame it in the case of Ricky Baker, because we're largely seeing the world through his eyes. And so we can see the reaction shot of how is Ricky Baker reacting to Bella killing and gutting a wild hog, right? And of course we see him drop his gun and faint. Or we can see, how he's reacting to Heck doing one thing or another. And so reaction shots are one way, sometimes building the geography of the scene from their point of view. For instance, if, the character's tall, or then maybe we look down on people from their point of view. Or maybe we stay at the same end of the table. Like, imagine you have a really long table and we look at everything from that point of view. Instead of moving around the table, the camera kind of stays rooted right next to them. And that way you're kind of building the geography around them. And now we're identifying with their world, how they're seeing the world. But there's another way you can also, build up perspective through who we actually spend time with. Like how we enter and exit a scene. And in this case, like we spend most of our time with Ricky. Nearly every scene, not every scene, but almost every scene is with him, and usually even at, his height. If you think about when we first meet Ricky, we jump pretty quickly into being told by Paula the kind of person he is, right? The whole disobedient, spitting, running, kicking, all that stuff. And we see all that stuff, right? We cut away to him kind of reenacting these things, spitting over the bridge and all that kind of stuff. And when we do that, we see all those actions from a distance. Like we're not right up on him. We're kind of across the street in a lot of these shots. And that's because it's her perspective of Ricky. But it isn't really who he is or how he sees himself. We're looking at him from her point of view. Whereas normally we largely see the world through Ricky's perspective, usually through the means of being with him, seeing how they relate to him, right? The camera is going to be at his eye level when we look at him. The camera is at his eye level, and we're not looking down on him. He's shorter than everybody else. He's a kid. Instead of looking at him through the other characters, though, we're at his eye level, and sometimes we're looking up based on if he's looking up. And so we're constantly building our perspective through him. And so we identify with him through this movie. So whenever he finds acceptance, you feel at the bedside whenever she's telling him, "You going to run away tomorrow?" He's like, "I don't know." She's like, "Okay, well, that's cool with me, man. Just be back by breakfast." And
I love that.
It melts you so much more whenever you've been spending your time with him, and you kind of get a sense of what that means to him, especially after the fact we've, I might be reorganizing in my head here, but I want to say it's after we've hung out with him and Heck for the first time, where he's like, "Bella says that I should do something for you." And she's like, "What? So what do you want me to do?" And he's like, "Leave me alone." He's like, "Cool." And he walks away. So we feel his loneliness to some extent, and having that moment with her is like, oh, now we're getting somewhere. And of course, he has his birthday party and his birthday present, right? He gets his dog, Tupac, all that stuff, and she dies. And that's a great scene too, because if you think about how we see her death, we come on the scene with Ricky as he turns the corner. She's revealed, with Heck beside her, crying, upset. And so from that, we cut to Ricky's face. We see him react, perspective, and then we cut to a medium wide of Heck and Bella. But here's the thing. That's a really long lens. We're seeing it from a very long distance, and that's in order to reflect Ricky's vantage point way on the other side. We never really get close physically. And so they're just constantly building that. Same thing when Zag dies, the dog, right? He gets put down by Heck. But when Heck pulls the trigger, we're actually with Ricky, and Heck is out of focus. He's in the background. We kind of see it, but we're really seeing Ricky and how he's reacting to that. And it's all in one shot. And it's, once again, to reinforce the idea that we're experiencing this story, this world, through Ricky Baker. And so Another thing that they kind of do with perspective is that they close the gap between Heck and Ricky throughout the film. In the beginning, they see each other from across like the property. They're not in the same shot. They don't share a frame for quite a while. And then they kind of gradually let them start to share a frame. I think the first time they share a frame, we don't even really see their faces. We're behind them and we're looking at their backs. And that's to kind of reinforce that, they're not really in it together yet. And it takes a while, and eventually they start sharing shots, sharing the screen, and over the shoulders, go from clean singles to dirty singles where maybe you catch Ricky in the foreground whenever we're looking at Heck, and vice versa. And that's to allow them to kind of grow closer visually, to reflect that they're growing, together emotionally and as a family. And so at the end, right, they're now fully sharing these two shots, especially whenever, he goes to rescue Heck from the retirement home that he's kind of been forced into. And then a really cool thing happens where they're both on the screen and they're laying down their rules. I have a rule, and you got to let me call you uncle. All right. And Ricky crosses the screen. He closes that gap to give him his hug. It's like,
oh yeah,
now we're here. And then, he's like, I got a rule too. You can't shoot me.
Yeah. Man, I never thought about the camera angle aspect of cinematography in general, much less this. Like, I know that camera angles are important. I'm not saying that I didn't know that, no. but like when you're filming a movie where you have a tall, grown-ass adult and a short, adolescent,
mm-hmm.
That has to be taken. You can't just, set up the camera and shoot. You have to shoot for him and shoot for Heck and shoot for Ricky at different heights. Like, that has to be taken into account because, yeah, like you said, I mean, you feel like you're with him if you're at his eye level. That's freaking brilliant. I never thought of that. That's awesome.
Yeah. And I realized watching this, I was like, yeah, I don't think we've ever touched on that. So this is the perfect fit for that, because this is such
the closing the gap of like between them. I mean, that's a really great way to tell this story through cinematography of like them coming together.
Yeah.
And then them being together, walking into the bush at the end.
That's right.
Together. Like, yeah, man, so good.
They're going to get their bird.
Yeah.
And that's the other cool part too, just to switch back again. Like, there is this aspect of living on the land, living off the land. But then there's this aspect of appreciating it as well. Like, we see that, at the start whenever Ricky and Bella are walking and he's like, can I shoot a horse? And she's like, what do you think I'm going to tell you? No. Like, of course not. Like, that's not what we do here. We're doing things with a purpose. And so finding that bird and like appreciating it, that's as much a part of being a naturist as living off the land is. I thought that was really cool.
That's awesome.
As far as perspective, there's another small little wrinkle that I like, which was Paula, the welfare woman, like social worker. I don't really know she has like this crazy title that I forgot already. But I love when she's on the news, we see her running through her checklist again of all the bad things. Y'all don't understand the kind of boy we're dealing with here. They're like, oh, well, tell us. Like, she starts running through it, and she starts doing that little repeated, no child left behind, no child left behind.
No child.
And I love cutting to the reaction shots of the news anchors because they tell us everything we really need to know. Right now, up until that point, we've only seen two perspectives, Heck and Ricky versus Andy and Paula. Andy's her sidekick. Now we're like, are they really that bad? Is what's going on that bad? And so seeing the news anchors kind of react like, oh, this woman is not well. Like, you can kind of see them feel that she's warped in her perspective. That's really good. And then even at the end of the film, she's not really ready to stop. Paula's kind of like wanting to read the Miranda rights, and he's like, no, we don't do that here. That's more of an American thing. And Andy has to tell her, like, hey, it's over. You're not a cop. And I feel like, speaking a little bit, there's this theme I feel is running throughout the entire film, which is family and belonging and being rooted with a sense of purpose. I feel like most characters we meet have that aspect to them. Like Psycho Sam even is missing that. This is what happens whenever you're completely unrooted. You lose your mind, and you're weird, and you're asocial, as opposed to Ricky and Heck have their moments too, right? Heck is not the most sociable guy, but as time goes on, he gets rooted again after losing his Bella. You start to see him take root a little bit too, and you can see Paula, she's needing that, and she has it whenever she's chasing Ricky. Like, she's the Terminator, and he's Sarah Connor. Like, she has a purpose. And whenever that's stripped away, suddenly it's like, oh, who am I now? And so you can feel her looking for significance and belonging. And I feel like that's just kind of echoed through the film, even whenever they're talking about Bella, and he's like, she didn't have what we have. She was trying to create it for us. It's like, oh, wow. Yeah. And so, it's a beautiful movie. It has a lot of beautiful ideas, and I love the use of nature as a means of healing the people. It feels like there's this element of connecting with nature has its own healing element. You have this kid from the city who has to leave the city and get into nature, and be with a nature-dwelling family in order to really, heal and belong. And I don't know, maybe escape the skuxx life, whatever skuxx is. That's kind of hilarious. But yeah, I don't know. That's the end of the story.
Yeah, no, I like I said earlier, I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed being in that world. And I think, I would just go watch a Wes Anderson movie and get what I wanted, but moving forward, but I really did think that it was very strong. It was hilarious at times. Seeing what's his name?
Sam Neill?
Murray Hewitt in there was just, I mean, any New Zealand film he has to be in.
Yeah.
He's just always in everything. And he made it for me, but there was a lot of things that made it for me, Sam Neill made it for me. I thought the kid who played Ricky Baker is really, really, really good, as well. I like that the casting that they picked an overweight kid, who totally just, his character just does not belong in the New Zealand brush, right? But he thrives in it, right? And he doesn't lose weight throughout the months, right? He's still him. It's not like a story of change, and at least physical change, right? It's just he is, and he's still that afterwards. Physically, it has nothing to do with that. But emotionally, it's the growth. So you have to look at the character's emotional status at the beginning and at the end, rather than watching him physically transform. And that's the other thing that makes it hard to determine how long they've been in the brush, because normally, I guess in another world or in another film, he would lose weight, he'd be skinnier, because he's eating less, or he's not just eating less, he's eating more, off the land, right? More a
lot of exercise, and running around back there.
Exactly. Yeah. A lot of cardio. But they don't identify that at all. And so you have no concept of time.
Yeah.
And it's only through the dialogue that we realize, oh, it's been 6 weeks. Oh, they've been gone for 4 months now. And, and then which is brilliant. I love that. Yeah. I actually love that, because then it actually heightens the craziness of of Paula. Because it's it's been 6 months. Are you kidding me? This woman is still going nuts. And then, the whole time she's treating her sidekick, I forget his name. What's his name again?
Andy.
Andy. She's treating Andy like garbage, the whole time. And so you're thinking he's like mall cop kind of, whatever. But then at the end, he gets the last word, like you said. He's like, that, says that's an American thing. We don't do that. And you're not a police officer anyway, or something to that effect. Yeah. And so he gets the last word too. And she just kind of walks up defeated. But it heightens that whole craziness of her now learning through the dialogue that, oh my gosh, it's been 6 months or however long, and she's still crazy. So I thought it was a very interesting way of doing that, and a smart way of doing it rather than the typical way.
Absolutely, I completely agree, because I had those same questions running through my mind, like how long has it been? Because you see him hurt his leg and you're like, oh man, yeah. Should he be running? Is he going to hurt himself again? Like it created a fun little tension until you hear like, oh yeah, it's been 4 months. Like, oh, okay. Well then his leg's probably fine. He said it needed a few weeks. Yeah, we're good.
I think actually when he hurts his foot, the next time when they get up and they walk away, they haven't told you at all how long it had been. I think like maybe a few minutes later or something, we find out that through some other line that somebody else says that they've been gone for 6 weeks or it's been 6 weeks or something. Which
I found pretty funny, because whenever he starts saying, yeah, we're going to need to make camp for a few weeks, I'm laughing. I'm like, y'all aren't going to, build a shelter around him just because he hurt his foot. Why wouldn't you go back home? And then as they do leave and they run into those hunters at one point, they realize like, oh crap, we're on the lam. So it just created like a little bit of hilarity of disbelief, and how committed these characters are to kind of their world and
their lifestyle.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's great.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Same here, man.
Nice. Well, cool. What are you going to recommend this week?
So last night, sat down, was just hanging out with my wife and her best friend B, who came over just to say hi, and she mentioned the Wonder Years, and I thought, I wonder what the pilot was like on the Wonder Years. And I looked it up, and it's on Hulu. So we watched the first 2 episodes, and it's brilliant. The first episode, my wife was in tears. It's so good. And whatever you thought about the Wonder Years, it's still that good. So I'm going to recommend the pilot. I haven't watched past 2 episodes, but I'll recommend the pilot of the Wonder Years.
Nice. I'm absolutely gonna go watch that. That's such a good.
Yeah, I know, right? I knew you were gonna like be like, oh yeah, I'm in.
I'm in all the way.
Yeah, it's a pretty easy watch, So
nice. I'm gonna recommend. So if you like this dynamic of kid with a grumpy old man, then you really absolutely have to go watch St. Vincent. It's Bill Murray, and he's fantastic. And it also stars Melissa McCarthy. I'm not a Melissa McCarthy fan. I don't find her humor very funny to me. And so I relented very reluctantly whenever I finally watched this, because I was like, I'm not a fan of hers. But she's not funny in this. It's pure drama, from her performance. And she is absolutely terrific. Like, she is fan-freaking-tastic. And I would highly recommend, like, any other dramas that she's in, like, I want to watch, because she is so good. Her drama, I'm all there for it. And so St. Vincent is for you. Like, I promise, if you watch this movie, you'll be in tears, you'll laugh, and you'll completely enjoy the dynamics that are at play. It's Bill Murray. Come on.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
I'll go watch that. I've been looking for a new film that I haven't seen. I haven't seen it.
Ooh.
So yeah, I'm gonna go watch it.
If you like it, maybe we'll cover that one. I forgot all about it. Okay.
Yeah.
If you like it, maybe we'll cover that one. I forgot all about it. Okay. And if you like it, maybe we'll watch it. And if you like it, maybe we'll cover that one. I forgot all about it. Okay. And if you like it, maybe we'll cover that one. I forgot all about it. Nice. Stay tuned for next week. We're going to touch on Nomadland. That's been hanging around. I'm loving all the award attention it's getting. This was recommended to me by Alex, one of our listeners, and I watched it and absolutely loved it. And so go check it out, and stay tuned next week when we cover it. Don't forget to subscribe, drop us a review. If you want to leave us a note saying that, hey, talk about this or cover this movie, let us know. We did Hunt for the Wilderpeople as a request from Cassie, who is also editing this episode. And so don't forget
thanks, Cassie.
Yeah, thanks. And don't forget to drop us a review, Cassie. But yeah, so if you want to leave a comment on this episode and tell us what you thought about it, you can do that at thepestlepodcast.com/huntforthewilderpeople.
And our quote of the day is from Walt Whitman. I believe a leaf of grass is no less than the journey work of the stars. And it's just absolutely true and beautiful in every way. I mean, everything came from the same place, wherever you want to say that's from.
Yeah.
We are star stuff.
We are
for
star
sure.
stuff. It's so cool.
So why just because of the nature aspect?
Yeah, the nature aspect. I was like, who do I want to hear from about nature? And I was like, the freaking man himself. Like, Walt Whitman has written some of the most beautiful poems, and I haven't read a ton of them to be frank. But I always think Walt Whitman when I think of nature. And so, yeah, I wanted to hear from him, and I stumbled across this. There's several good ones, of course. But this one kind of spoke to the awe-inspiring aspect of nature. Like, just to think of and compare a leaf of grass to the journey work of stars is beautiful. I mean, if you think, the distance and the complexity that it takes for starlight to reach the earth, that's pretty magnificent. And to also think of the growth and what it takes, for a simple, everyday, forgettable leaf, to be in existence and to arrive where it did and how it did, that's no less absolutely awe-inspiring.
Yeah, don't think too hard on it, because it'll melt your brain.
That's right.
Melt your brain. I remember the first time when I was a kid hearing about the idea that I went to Catholic school, hearing about the idea that God always was. I mean, whether you believe in God or not, it doesn't even matter. Just imagine something always being. Like, really sit and think. It will melt your brain. The same way of like how we got here in the first place, and not all the things that had to happen for me and you to be talking right now about this thing at this moment, even, is just unbelievable. It's unbelievable. So yeah, I mean, we should do an episode just on that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I would love to talk all day long on that.
Oh my God.
Wow. Man, fantastic, man. Thank you so much. And thank you, Cassie, for the recommendation. And if anybody has any more recommendations, please let us know. Please review us and subscribe, all that stuff that Wes just said. And make sure to join us next week when we're going to be doing Nomadland, and watch it beforehand because we're going to spoil a lot of stuff. Until then, I'm Todd.
I'm Wes.
Go watch some movies.